This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Well, thanks everybody for making this work and coming together sort of on short notice. I know it's not something we normally do, and appreciate everybody making some time today. So just well, let's stick with the agenda, which I guess I should try to pull up. Which just we'll talk. I guess I said circulated the minutes from the last meeting. I didn't hear back from Cassie with any changes, and I didn't think everybody else here seemed to think it was okay based on limited feedback. So, so are we okay with approving those minutes from the previous meeting?
Yes.
Good, all right.
Yeah.
Is that a motion to approve?
I guess you would like to make. Why don't you go make it, Scott, and we'll make it.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February meeting.
All right.
Second. I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
I abstained. I wasn't here. So
You abstained, you weren't there. Okay. Four in favor, one abstention. All right, so we don't have any other members of the public here to speak, so we can just go right into the next part, which is coming out of our last meeting. One of the ideas we were kicking around as part of the future Green Communities grants was, maybe thinking about electric bus vehicle options where schools are concerned. And partly because of the success of getting the grant for the police cars, the electric vehicles for the police department, public safety department, and then also just because of the ongoing discussion around costs with schools and the new school consolidation. There's a lot of budget back and forth happening right now with that as they're trying to set the budget for the next school year, which Marin is intimately involved with. So in doing so, John took on some research and reached out to Dale at the business office of the school to find out about the contract. He also reached out to the folks at Highland, the electric bus company that's been doing some pilot programs, and found some information. And sort of the upshot is that the contract for the schools is being redeveloped right now, I guess, to go out for bid kind of at the end of this month or early next month. So that the timeliness of that just sort of dictated that we'd want to have a discussion around maybe some things that we could do or could influence now. So with that, John, I'm going to have you take us through what you did and what discussions that you had with them.
Yeah. Well, I first tried to get my hands on the contract, and Dale was very nice about sharing that. I went through it. There's just, I don't know, it's 26 pages, probably 20 pages of it. 20 pages is boilerplate and stuff that really isn't terribly relevant for whether or not you can substitute electric bus, like insurance requirements or, disciplining students on the bus type provisions in the contracts, driver training and driver records, all that stuff. But, there's some key parts to it. Interestingly, one of them, which was a fuel escalation clause that cited a fuel index connected to the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative program, fuel buying program or whatever. They don't even use it. It's supposed to be triggered by 5 cent or more per gallon, up or down, changes in the fuel price index. And Dale sent me to talk to the guy, or sent me the contact information to talk to the guy at Lower Pioneer Valley, because I thought this might be important, understanding the pricing structure and current, how diesel prices are going up and down and how we might save on that. And he said the index cited in the contract was nonsensical, couldn't be used, and sounds like the town's not using it. But that's sort of neither here nor there. It's just interesting to find that out from talking to him. So the 3-year contract, if you've had a chance, I don't know, to look at any of the notes I provided, it was kind of late in the game, but I wanted to run them through Jamie rather than just send them to you guys yesterday when I did them. we're paying about 80,000 for 7 each for 7 routes right now. And with the new schools, there's something like 300 more elementary school students that need to be bused to the Mountain View this year compared to the numbers of elementary school students who were bused last time. I don't know if there's a reduction possibly in middle and no, never mind, forget that.
The location's the same, so it would be for the middle school students, there shouldn't really be a change year over year.
Yeah,
Other
yeah,
than the grade fluctuations, but
right. I guess I was thinking there'd be a reduction in some kids who lived around the middle and high school who could now walk to school and didn't need to be provided the bus option that used to have to be bused into town for these elementary schools, but leaving that aside.
Not any significant numbers.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so there's an expectation by Dale of an additional 5 buses needed next year. For some reason, I don't get, she didn't expect there to be much of a huge increase in the annual cost of a bus contract, even though there'd be 5 additional routes required in anticipation for getting all those elementary school kids over to Mountain View.
Wait, definitely we're planning for a transportation cost increase. Maybe not per bus,
Yeah,
but definitely
Okay.
overall, the budget's going up by $500,000 probably.
right.
yeah. I would have thought there was. It's just for some reason Dale had said she didn't, maybe don't know what she was maybe misinterpreting what I was asking her, but she had said she didn't expect a big increase. But it makes sense what you're saying, and you're right there in the committee. So, the buses are like $300,000. There's 2 ways to get them, maybe through a grant. Go ahead, Jamie, do you want to say something?
I'd say that's the an electric bus would be about 300.
Electric buses, 300 versus roughly $100,000 diesel bus. And, maybe they can be gotten up through a grant directly to the municipality, to Easthampton, but primarily the way it would happen would be for a third party like Highland Electric, who does an all-in kind of turnkey operation. They are just supplying you with the bus, and they pretty much are going to compete or be right around the same cost per route or per mile that you currently are getting, and you have to supply the driver. They didn't, to give you everything, the maintenance, the charging station, everything, but the town would be responsible for the driver. And but those take a long time to get underway. I mean, there's supposedly a 10 to 12 month lag between ordering a bus and getting one now. Yeah. Highland has it. Go ahead, Gene.
No, that was 10 to 12 month lag. If we were to go start doing something with them, with Highland, it would be that much of a
Yeah,
lag.
but I'm guessing that it's not just Highland, it's just the electric bus market. There's a lag time between orders and deliveries.
Mhm.
He also said the anticipated possibly 6 months of time required from the start of the permitting process to put in charging infrastructure. And sometimes you also have issues with the local electric utility willingness to work with you, and how they do that. So, you obviously couldn't specify a requirement for an electric bus for this coming, year 1 of the contract.
Mhm.
What I was hoping, and some of the stuff I had prepared to share with Dale, so she could talk, because she wanted to clear it with the superintendent and the school committee before they did anything. What I was hoping is just to provide some suggestive language of something that would not submarine, proposals if they couldn't come up with a bus, but it was something that would maybe trigger in on the 2nd year or 3rd year of the contract, or was an optional or something that give them, extra weighting in their proposal or points in their proposal if they could substitute electric for. So in the email I just sent, I had provided a few ways to approach that. I don't know if people got that last minute email I sent, in a way that, because Dale responded without having seen what I had written up. as to how you might structure it. She talked with the superintendent, and the superintendent, she said, well, there are concerns that this would dampen down the number of bids we get. It would restrict the number of bidders, and maybe we wouldn't get as competitive a price. And I can see that's obviously a concern, but to me, it's, can you word it and structure it such that it's not an absolute requirement necessarily, especially in year one, but it's not an absolute requirement that they do it. It's just something that it's an option. All else being equal, this company and this company, if this one can supply an electric bus or an electric passenger van in their services, then they get extra points, or their bid is favored. So we didn't get a chance to talk about that their concern is about dampening the number of bidders. But she did express in her email back afterwards their interest in trying to get electric van, possibly a 14-passenger van for some of those special education transportation. And there's a number of vehicles involved in that route, those routes right now.
Are those buses? I know what you found out is that, right, and Maren confirmed some of this for me too, which is that right, the city doesn't own any of the buses, right? Or they basically just contract out for the sort of turnkey service, like they provide the drivers, they provide the
Right now. Yeah,
And to be
it's pretty much
clear, different contracts. So there's a contract that's for the big buses and for our standard routes. And there's a different contract for special education, homeless, and foster care students, because those are coming from farther afield. So there's two different contracts that those are involved with.
And both of those are up for renegotiation now, or just the main one?
Definitely the main one. I think the other one is also, but I can't, not 100%.
I have the contract language around I can look at. It didn't emphasize van. I think it might have mentioned van pool and special ed routes, but I don't think, one thing I didn't get when Dale sent me this stuff was all the addendums and bid forms and things where you would see, here's a price for a 65-passenger bus, here's a price for a 15-passenger, here's the route descriptions and names and all that. I didn't get that from her, so.
Yeah, that wouldn't have, she probably couldn't have provided that to you, actually, because that would be but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and Maren pointed out to me at the beginning in a message, that changing anything that would require the city to then provide drivers, to provide maintenance, that obviously changes things quite a bit and changes the equation, and introduces additional pieces that the city's probably not ready to deal with or doesn't want to deal with.
Right.
And I can certainly understand that, right? You want to just sort of cut a check and say, okay, this is taken care of. So there's that one thing to keep in mind in terms of like how, what this might be. But I guess my other question is, in terms of tamping down the number of bids, is there an expected number of bids that they would receive for this? Obviously they're using one company right now that also does Northampton schools and is located, has a depot like basically here in town. Maren, do you know?
We usually get about 3 bids.
Okay.
So anything that would cause us to get less than that would be a problem. But I like the idea of putting into the, and working with Dale to get the exact language, but that basically doesn't make any requirements, but gives additional points towards budget, towards the evaluation of the contract offered, of the bid, that would give additional points if they did offer to either have one or bring one in year 2 or 3.
Yeah,
I think that doesn't affect any of the bids or shouldn't damper any prospects, but it just could, if someone's already moving that direction, it'll give them a little extra bonus to be able to be considered.
I'm curious by the school committee, has this ever been looked into in the past by the school committee? Using electric buses? Okay, I just was curious.
Because we don't own the buses, so I don't think there's been much of a movement in Western Massachusetts to move our buses to electric.
I thought Amherst had just.
It's
made that.
UMass. I saw something and mentioned of Amherst doing it as well, but I believe it's just UMass as part of PVTA has an electric bus or two, and the PVTA system is going for 4 or 5 or something. They have a couple.
Yeah, it's PVTA is definitely doing that, but it's not the public school buses for
Right.
public
Okay.
kids.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Highland Electric would certainly know what districts have incorporated the buses and might have some advice about working with the existing bus companies and contracts.
They just cited one. I mean, it's on their webpage, and he talked to me a little bit about it. The city of Beverly in Eastern Mass. Haven't called them. And they said they also have another couple of public bus systems in contract negotiations right now. It's kind of not completed, but they're working on it. So there's other school systems like other parts of the country. One in California that I guess pioneered it, Twin Rivers or something like that. Bay Area. I can't remember where in California, but yeah.
The critical piece, I think, is just has to be clear is that because we don't own it, it's not that we can push in a certain direction, but what we can do is encourage, because it's a subcontracting company, we can encourage those people to go in that direction. And that's why I like your idea of having, additional points or special favor, status on an application if they're able to provide that.
Yeah, and obviously we're at a point here where the school and the city has to move because they got to get this in place, and they're not going to wait around for a lot of stuff. But it's only a 3-year contract too, and to Connie's point, this is still relatively new technology in terms of where it is in the rollout. I mean, yes, it exists, but a lot of the infrastructure isn't there. There's still supply chain and other things being worked out in terms of how quickly you can even get these things and the life cycle cost of owning them. So it's good for us to sort of plant this seed now that even if it's not going to bear much fruit for the time being, want it on the radar certainly for the next time around, right? I mean, the landscape's going to be a lot different 2-3 years from now. There'll be more, just the more passenger electric vehicles are going to lead to more infrastructure and everything else. So
just one last thing is that Highland does seem to use the approach of not cutting an agreement with the municipality directly, but to work with a bus vendor and work out some terms with them. And I guess the bus operator can, they have the flexibility if they're the ones who get the electric bus of offering that bus on any contract that they might be bidding on. And then they work out the deal with Highland about putting in infrastructure wherever it is at their depot or whatever to charge the bus.
Well, that's interesting then from a standpoint of a company like Durham that does, again, a couple, local municipalities and I think, has one place that they all come from, that they could do, we could encourage them to do that or sort of, work with them maybe.
Yeah.
From Highland standpoint, I guess it's good to hear that because it alleviates a little bit Baron's concern about the drivers, right? If they're working with the vendor or with the, the company rather than the city, then again, we don't have to worry about hiring drivers and all that sort of thing.
Right.
I guess, yeah. Did they say anything about the size of municipalities that they'd be willing to work with or companies, right? We have, 7 to 12 buses or 7 to 12 routes. Like, would that even be big enough to interest them given where they are as a company right now?
Highland, I think they're happy to do business with anybody. I'm surprised how quickly I got a call back kind of, and
okay.
The guy knows Massachusetts. He knows Easthampton's not a big city. I don't think I'm not sure the equipment is out there to just supply a whole, it might be kind of complicated to supply the entire bus fleet. Plus people want to want to walk before they run kind of thing, or
Mhm.
crawl before they walk, and make sure the thing works in their system before they go whole hog and buy a whole fleet.
So let me ask a question about what you said about Northampton. Do we have a relationship with Northampton in terms of the busing? Or does it just happen it's the same company and they choose to have the buses shared?
Yeah, I believe that's just the company.
So I'm just wondering whether it would be useful to see where Northampton is in terms of thinking about electric buses, whether that would be useful from a negotiation point of view, if Northampton and Easthampton were both interested, whether that would be put more pressure on some of these companies to start offering electric buses. I don't know.
That's a good point. And yeah, definitely something that, the value of, bigger numbers certainly moves the needle. And, Northampton seems like the type of thing that they would be into. I don't know where we don't know where they are in their contract cycle.
Yeah.
Or what.
Well-
And we don't know, right now, I guess if the same company would end up with both of them again after this, but that could be the type of thing that maybe after the fact, we could put some pressure on, or not even just pressure, but like try to say, hey, we're interested in this. Here's a company like Northampton wants to do this too. Maybe we can talk, and maybe they can start getting a couple. You can work out a deal for a couple electrics.
The reason I thought Amherst was using electric buses is there's a Mothers Out Front group, which is very active in Amherst, and they've been trying to get the school system to
Right.
switch to electric buses for a
Right.
couple of years. And it
Right.
might be also interesting to have a conversation about sort of where, they must have a lot of information about this by now, and what companies they've talked to, and, they might have some good information. I'd be happy to try to get some information from that group if that would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'll do that.
I think there's definitely parent groups. I know there's other parent environmental issues. There's been this anti-idling initiative.
Yeah.
With the schools.
That's Paula Garcia. Yeah.
Paula. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So yeah, that would be the types of people that could help build some support for this type of thing. From that standpoint, from a health and environment standpoint.
Hey guys, I gotta jump. I only
Yeah.
had the half hour. So thank you very much. If there's something that you guys end up finalizing, like if you want to try to propose this to go to the, to seek a school committee, or to seek the, superintendent and business director to include some sort of language,
Mhm.
let me know, and I can try to work it on with the school committee, obviously. So
Yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
Mary. We'll do that, and I think I like that tack of like making it sort of an alternate, but or an alternative, but like a bonus point sort of thing, like a tiebreaker kind of situation. So I think that's probably where we should go with this given the time frame. And we'll work on that. Maybe we can have something to approve at the next meeting on the 28th. If we
Okay.
don't need to have something before that. So thanks.
thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye, Marion.
Hi, Maren.
It's good to have. I'm glad to have his perspective, and if the double serving on the school committee certainly helps with that. So
Can
Couldn't
I
we ju-
go ahead.
I just
Con-
want to ask a question about the charging stations. This second sheet is what the Jason Raposa suggested be put into the contract. Is that what this is? I'm just looking at it now.
Which second sheet, the email I sent
The
you?
concept for transportation services contract section, that's the heading. Is that what this is, like a suggestion for the language to put into the next contract? Is that what this is?
Concept, you mean the concept one? I said concept?
Yes, yeah,
No,
yeah.
that was ideas I was drumming up about 10 days ago.
Oh,
After first talking to Dale, that we could possibly provide her to give them some options for how to think about incorporating electric.
because what
in
I'm
their-
curious
in their
about is because I'm just wondering whether it would really make sense to have the contractor own the charging station. I just, like, we would pay for it, but they would own it. Is that how it would work?
No, Highland Electric, I don't think this is the way to go particularly, but if Highland Electric had an agreement with us, it would be kind of weird to have the charging station located at Durham.
Yeah,
For one thing, some next time the contract comes up, somebody else gets the bid and you got your charging station in the wrong depot.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, I think that I think what they prefer to do is that they would make it, they would work with Durham to get them an electric bus. And they'd come in and try to do it competitively so that they could turn around and offer us bid on contracts at an equivalent price per mile or price per route that they currently do. And then all the arrangements are between them and Durham. The problem if they dealt with us and they didn't deal with Durham, have an agreement with Durham, is that like if they had an agreement with Easthampton, they own the bus, they're leasing it, they're essentially leasing it to us. They
Mhm.
own it, they do all the costs of maintenance, repair, everything.
Mhm.
And they just charge us, they just have a fee per route with us.
Mhm.
I forget what I was going with that, but where do they put the charger if they have the agreement with us? We don't want to have the charger over in the schoolyard when our service provider, our bus contractors got his drivers and buses all over here on Ferry Street in Easthampton. It's
Well,
doesn't seem very workable.
I used to work for a school system, and I know nothing about the contracts, but they had a company who provided the buses and the drivers, and then they took the buses and kept them wherever their business was. And, I'm sure it was not maybe the cheapest way to do it, but, that's one way to look for a company that says, we have electric buses, which we will use to transport your children. There are buses, there are drivers, and we charge them as we choose to. And I mean, that would in some ways be the easiest. I don't know if there are people offering that service, but
I think that's the problem. You have companies that market, sell, lease electric buses, maybe one or two. I don't know. Highland said there's other companies like them, but they're not in the bus transportation business. They don't do the drivers and the maintenance. They don't do the drivers and all the scheduling and all that.
But we want this, we really want is for these businesses that have diesel buses to have electric buses and provide the service of transporting school children to school and back. That, we want them to change how they're transporting them in terms of the fuel they're using.
Right.
Unless the town wanted to get into the business, which not likely they do.
Unless there's grant money out there.
Well, and they're right, and that's the other part. And I think Cassie sent around the message with there's that upcoming webinar, I think, on electric bus, electric vehicle things. There is the Green Communities grants, which again I don't think get so big that we could even consider buying a bus, or that again the city would want that. But where we can think about, I mean, two things. One is we can put a little bit of pressure, which is great. What John did, reaching directly out to the school and Dale, having that conversation, saying, hey, this is something that we can exert some pressure on from this direction, and say, okay, we want to at least leave ourselves open the option to do this, right? We don't want to close off the potential for this, right? That's one thing. Then the other thing is there are these other smaller vehicles, the buses and the vans that are maybe used for team transportation or some of the other stuff that could be more in line with a grant kind of thing.
Right. And maybe that's the place to start is to see if we can at least get, but do we own those vehicles, or are those also contracted? We don't own any.
We don't own them. We own nothing.
Can I ask, does anybody know for how long Easthampton has been working with Durham, or whether we have changed bus companies in recent memory?
It's 5 years at least, because this last contract started 2017, 18, and went through 20, and then they extended it 2 years to get us through this year.
Right.
So it's like 5 years or more. It might be 7, because I think it was a 3-year. I'm confused. It's at least 5.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's sort of the name that I picture on school buses from having lived here for, a bunch of years, but I don't know, that's anecdotal.
Yeah.
Because, if they are kind of de facto the long-term bus company, then, it may be more realistic or more reasonable to talk about doing a charging station at their depot or whatever. If it's been the same thing for 30 years, there's no reason to
Right.
act like, we're suddenly going to change.
Right.
Whereas if it has bounced around, then we certainly would be more reticent to do that.
Yeah, I mean, as a private company, if they can start to see the writing on the wall, like, hey, we're going to be moving in this direction, it makes sense for us to have chargers here.
Mhm.
There are, probably grants and incentives available to us as a private company, tax benefits, whatever it might be.
Sure.
We can go ahead and get this in. The other thing is there is some infrastructure going in at Mountain View around this. If I recall from previous discussions, there's at least a couple charging stations that are going to be there. I imagine the possibility exists to expand that in the future. Again, especially as electric vehicles are becoming more prevalent. So at the very least, it allows for the potential that, hey, there could be some infrastructure at the school that's available to the buses, if and when they need it. Kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
it's my understanding with most of these companies, though, they set things up so they use the same buses for more than one school system too. Like they stagger everything, and they're always, so they may not be all that interested in having a charging station at the school unless that's where they get housed.
Oh, right. No, I don't. Right. Exactly. Yeah. They're not
So-
necessarily be there for that long, but like, the bus shows up in the afternoon, it's waiting 20 minutes for school to get out, and it's plugged in that whole time. So it's just getting a little bump, or whatever. The other thing about all those things is they can be paired with batteries and stuff like that too. And now, there's all these other things that are happening in the world where batteries are getting aggregated and they're being used to dispatch energy when the grid needs it, and that's something that that's a much larger discussion, of course, but there's all these advantages to having that stuff in place. And there could be, ways that it helps.
It happens that, excuse me, sorry, it happens that I'm taking a part-time retirement job at the Northampton Transportation Services Department as a school bus monitor. And so the person who just hired me is in charge of transportation services at the Northampton School Department. She actually lives about a half a mile down the road or a mile from the Durham. She lives on East Street in Easthampton. Has a farm up on that hill there. Tammy Lieber, yeah. She's just a mile from Durham's depot there. I can ask her, what Northampton's talked about it, or did they think that they have any interest in going forward, or some movement going in town to start putting this stuff into their contracts?
Yeah.
If nothing else, putting it into the contractor would kind of alert them to the fact that Easthampton is looking into this, and in the future, they might not get the contract if they don't start supplying electric buses. I mean, I think it's a great idea, if nothing else, just to have it there.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask or propose, is that, for the EAC's purposes for this, this school busing contract renewal period, could we recommend to the school council that they incorporate language in their bid packet that says a busing company that offers electric bus options will be considered, most favorable among the bids we receive, like in more graceful language than that.
I would like to do that if possible. And I think that that if we're going to do that with any hope of it being acted on, I think we probably can't wait till another meeting.
Right.
Jamie, do you feel like there's been enough consensus in the group here? It's a public meeting. We've got an agenda, an advertised agenda to say, even just loosely, we're not saying do this. We're saying here's some possible language that we think would be beneficial for you to include in the future.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely. I think, the support here and from Marin as well was definitely clearly in favor of suggesting that, recommending it, and helping to draft a little bit of language if they need it. I think you were being expansive in the stuff you wrote the first time, in terms of like trying to allow for loopholes and things. I think we'll probably narrow it down a little bit, really, to just like
right,
a single paragraph or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that's just like, we're going to view, any company that's, offering or, intends to offer electric bus service, we're going to view those more favorably, given and all other things being equal. Certainly, cost is going to be the first thing. Again, I don't know how they're going to word it
Right.
all. But, and that should hopefully satisfy, Dale and the superintendent that we're not doing anything that's going to make it more onerous or that
Right.
make it less desirable for bidders right now. It really is just kind of laying the groundwork for the future. And then at the same time, we can talk more with them about, what are some other options with some of these smaller buses or these other companies, what's the status of that contract? Maybe that's an area we'd want to look for some grant funding for, to Cassie's point from last time, needing something specific for the next round.
And I guess the only question about that though is that then we would be providing the drivers if we owned the bus.
If we're right, anything that,
So that is, that's an added expense because then there's another employee, yada, yada. So
right.
That's if we got a grant of a van for the city of Easthampton. But if they put in the contract an option in year 2 or 3 to provide an electric bus at X price, electric van at X price, this is, what was I going to say? If the city got a grant, then you're asking the vendor to quote a price for years going forward for what they would charge the city for the driver, for the operator services of an operator. Because they're hiring they hire all the other operators. This would be one more. The only difference is they don't have any, they didn't supply the vehicle.
I
That
wonder
the
if they'd
vehicle
be
came under a
interested in
grant.
that. I don't know whether they would object to doing that, or I have no idea. Yeah, that would be the simplest way to
Yeah.
handle it for sure. Yeah.
Can we, if you wanted to clean it up more, Jamie, first of all, I was going to suggest that can we just share the language as a suggestion to the school department, transportation services, Dale, just draft some language, share it with them as a suggestion. We know they're going to take it to the school committee. It's going to go, if they're going to do something with it, it's going to go to the superintendent. This is what Dale said, for her approval and school committee.
Mhm.
So rather than us then try to send this to the school committee to have it work its way back down to Dale before she sees it, it's
Right.
going to be past the time that they're going to have their bids out the door.
Yeah, you've already been in touch with her, so this is not like coming out of nowhere. I think it's fine to like work with her directly and say, this is kind of what we'd like to see right now, given the constraints and given the time. Like, we know this isn't all that much, but it's something that starts gets in the direction. And I think it shows that we've heard their concerns about what they want to be able to do in terms of how many bids they want to get and whatever. So I think that's entirely reasonable.
So how do we go about finalizing suggested language or some suggested term and then having people here be all comfortable with it? If it's done outside of this live session, just run it by people on email? Or is that one of those things you can't do?
I don't know if that counts as like deliberation per se, because it's really just like editing something that we've all kind of agreed on the general.
I think so. And it's not any policy. We're not controlling any policy, turf, assets, anything. We're just making a suggestion to another part of the town.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's fine if we want to workshop it, via email, and just to suggest edits and comments, whatever of that. I think that's fine.
So I will move that I will make a motion that the members of the committee work together to draft an advisory letter to the folks at the school, including the superintendent, the committee, and the transportation coordinator, with our recommendations for incorporating electric busing options in their request for bids for the upcoming busing contract.
Seconded, well stated.
Yes. Well said. Way to keep us
I'll see if I can remember that to write it in the notes.
We're being recorded, so we're.
Oh, good.
Scott, do you get copies of the recordings when you put notes together? Or are you just doing it from your own notes?
I'm mostly doing them while we're talking.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Um,
Motion passes, so we will, we will work to get the language on that solidified and sent over.
we do need to work pretty quickly on that. Unless somebody else wants to volunteer, I'm happy to let somebody else take it, but if not, I will go back and work on some language that reflects what was discussed here today. Simplify it one, maybe one general thing about all buses, electric buses favored, all else being equal, including price.
Mhm.
And another one being something maybe about an optional quote from vendors about electric van availability for the special education routes going forward, something like that.
If that's part of the contract or if that's a separate, I mean,
If
I
it's
guess
not, yeah.
it's a separate
She
contract.
mentioned it. She mentioned it as something they were into, so I don't know why she would have mentioned if they weren't also bidding that out.
Right.
And then we want to put in something about if the city does manage to get an electric van, but having them provide the driver, do we just not want to put that into the?
I don't think that's something we need to worry about. That's more like from their side right now, I'd say. I think it's just kind of advisory language.
See, the other thing about there probably actually is more than one vehicle being used, because often, there's one child that's be picked up and taken to some special program in one place. And,
Mhm.
it's rare that a van is really the only vehicle used in these situations, because they're usually kids who get bused have very unique profiles, So,
I heard something like in the contract or an email I read from Dale said that to get 40 students to, what do they call it? To their special education programs that are not happening at their schools, and 60 students to the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, they use 3 buses. And so that's 120, that's more than capacity to hold, 180 kids, but they're handling about 100 with those 3 buses. So
that's actually very impressive. They're able to do that. I'm impressed.
although I'm not sure where the vans versus buses are used. I'm a little foggy on that. I'll write something up and put it back out to people by tomorrow morning. And if people could find some feedback, maybe we can get the feedback. Maybe we could get it in Dale's hands and school department's hands, by the end of the night, Friday or Monday morning or something.
Yeah, I think that's
Shouldn't be too hard.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
This is
no,
great.
it's a really great legwork on that
You're welcome. It was fun. So,
great. And then, since you're also going to be dealing with the Northampton folks, you have whatever fact finding you can do there and sort of where they are in their contract.
Yeah.
Because if there is going to be that sort of, economies of scale that we might get from going hand in hand with them to a common vendor.
right.
To say, hey, we'd really like you to move in this direction as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And maybe we can help you.
Or for that matter, there's no reason why it has to be Northampton from our point of view. The vendor has decided to
Right.
provide busing together, but maybe there's another local community that's thinking about electric buses that we might hear about. Or
Well, you're going to check into Amherst, right?
I am, and I know some of those other upfront
Yeah.
people, and they probably can tell me more about what's happening generally in the Pioneer Valley. I'll see what information I can get.
Yeah, that's great. And right, I mean, it's not like Easthampton and Northampton are the only towns using buses, right? That whatever contract we get, there's probably there may be other towns being serviced by the same company.
I think Dunham, I mean, I go by that street a lot in their depot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure they also have the Hampshire Regional contract.
Yeah, the Hampshire region. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. I think I do see the Hampshire regional buses coming through town a lot. So yeah, so again, there's reasons, and maybe we can start to coalesce with so do make it more of a regional initiative even. Certainly better to do that. So great. Well, I appreciate it. Again, everyone's input and time, and Jonathan putting all this information together. I did just have a quick item on there just for other updates. I mentioned to you all the open meeting law. I'll forward you some additional dates that they put out for that are further into April and May, I think. So, but they are, the city is requiring that all members of committees do that and submit, the follow-up once they said you're going to get a certificate. It turns out you just get an email and you just have to forward that to the mayor's office.
I'm signed up for the next one. Is it next week?
Yeah, it's next week, I think on the 22nd. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
couldn't do that one. Yep. So that's great. And then there'll be some more options for that as well. Just the quick update on the aggregation is that working with the city councilors, Owen recommended that I wait to do the presentation or to discussion of new business for the April 6th meeting. I think they had a meeting yesterday, and now they don't have another one until the 6th. So we worked to finalize the language based on our last meeting, and some of the input that we got from Good Energy. I provided that to Owen and the other counselors. So I'm going to try to meet with him at some point in the next couple of weeks, sort of go through that, figure out. He walked me through the process as well. Basically, it'll get introduced as new business at the council. It'll get kicked to committee, I think the Government and Rules Committee or whatever it is, where again we'll be invited to come and talk about it and make maybe do a presentation around that. If it gets back out of that committee, it gets sent back to the full council for their deliberation and approval. But that could basically all happen over the course of like April into early May, I think, roughly. So that's
If you
where
need any help with that, let me know. I'd be happy to do anything that you
we'll
might
talk
need.
more at the next on the full meeting on the 28th. I'm hoping to met with Owen before that to sort of just solidify what everything's going to look like, and then have support or people participating, helping out with that for sure. So that's the quick update on that in terms of timing. And I think that's about it. Did anyone happen to sit on the Agriculture Commission?
I forgot.
School youth.
I wanted to, and then I forgot about it.
I couldn't make it to that either, unfortunately. So we'll get it. I think Cassie was most definitely there. So she should be able to update us at the next meeting, which I already have the Zoom stuff for. I'll have the agenda for that sent out next week. So we should be all good for 4:00 on the 28th.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Anything else from
Great.
anybody today?
Want a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
Move to we adjourn
Second it.
forthwith.
All in favor.
Aye.
All right.
All right.
Adjourn. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie, and
Thanks,
everyone. See you later,
Bye.
guys. Take care.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.